Ladies and gentlemen, this is certainly a pleasure for myself and the crew that again we're doing a documentary with Dr. Barry Fell, a gentleman that has, as far as I am concerned, has expanded epigraphy and many other ancient artifacts, languages, and the young people of this nation and the world should be very appreciative of this, as many of you are, I know that. But it just is really a blessing to be able to have this knowledge available in Dr. Barry Fell of the Epigraphic Society. Dr. Fell, thank you for allowing us back again.
It's a pleasure.
We're looking forward to this. We appreciate your work so very, very much.
Well, Arnold, we're very grateful to you and your crew too, because you're bringing our work to the attention of thousands of people who would never hear about it otherwise.
Well, thank you. It is our pleasure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the continuation of a program that Dr. Arnold Murray enabled me to do 3 years ago, dealing with the decipherment of some mysterious tablets found in Easter Island, and which had not been deciphered up to that time. Today we're going to take the work forward for the work that's been done in the intervening 3 years, and then, as we shall see later on, we're going to have to expand the area of investigation to cover much more of the Pacific than where we started. Easter Island is part of the Polynesian Triangle, as it's called, as you see in the map there. New Zealand at the southwest corner, Hawaii in the north corner, and Easter Island in the eastern corner, a huge area of the Pacific over which there are hundreds of islands scattered, all with people speaking dialects of the Polynesian language. Obviously that's because their ancestors sailed to all the different islands where they now are. The island, Easter Island, is famous for another reason, more famous still, for its gigantic statues, which have always been a matter of mystery to visitors to the island. Huge statues arranged in rows or standing singly, carved from volcanic rock by the original inhabitants of the island. The tablets which carried the mysterious writing, some of them are illustrated there. The smaller ones in the picture are modern copies made by modern Eastern Islanders for sale to tourists, and they do not really read correctly because at the present time they don't know how to write their ancient language. The big one underneath is a reproduction of one of the original tablets, which is full of information of a most interesting type, recorded by their ancestors. The subject matter that I dealt with in my last talk was that same big tablet, which was the one where I was able to crack the code. I was able to do it because about 150 or 60 years ago, a treaty called the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in New Zealand by the Maoris with Queen Victoria, and the hundreds of Maori chieftains reigning over different parts of the islands signed their names. The missionaries wrote the name out in English script, and the Maoris often wrote their names in their own system. And it was possible to deduce by studying some of the signatures that what the Maoris were writing was pictures of objects which can be depicted in pictures, which sound something like their names. And if you say the names of the objects depicted, you then get sounds that are very similar to the name of the person concerned. Adapting that principle, I was able to apply it to the Easter Island tablets, and in my last broadcast on this subject, I dealt with the discovery of the islands by the expeditions led by King Hotu around about 800 AD in huge sea-going canoes like the ones you see in this picture, drawn by a brilliant German artist who worked in Polynesia a century ago, called Dittmer. Dittmer's picture here depicts the departure of great canoes on an exploring voyage. Such a voyage was carried out by King Hotu, who discovered the islands and settled them, Easter Island. The next tablet that I dealt with handled a widespread Polynesian myth about their folk hero Maui, who is supposed to have brought up land from the bottom of the sea by fishing. The fascinating thing is that these Maui myths were unknown from Easter Island, although they were found all over the Pacific. The one remarkable thing about Easter Island is that they seem to have no knowledge of their great folk hero Maui. So it was a real surprise to find him mentioned on the tablets. His most famous exploit was to go fishing with his brothers with a magic fish hook, and with it he was able to bring up a gigantic fish from the bottom of the sea, and he slew it, and then it became the island. Wherever the legend is being related, it's that island that he brought up. In New Zealand it was the North Island of New Zealand, and in the other islands it was always the island where the story is being related. The particular myth I'm talking about, the fishing up of the land from the bottom of the sea, is discussed in the largest of those tablets that you saw in the original picture a few frames ago. And this is what the actual writing looks like on the tablet, and that amount of it. And then there's the episode as depicted by Dittmer, who of course did not know what was on this tablet. He got it from verbal sources. Then 150 years ago, an Easter Island chieftain dictated to a bishop of French bishop of Polynesia what he said was on that tablet, and that's all written out there. Now, it doesn't make any sense at all. What he was doing was giving the names of each of the pictures in these, each of the pictograms in these hieroglyphic texts over here, which made no sense to the bishop or anybody else. And in the job that I have done, I had to identify how each line, each statement he made was similar to a statement that made sense. So these couplets, these pairs of writings here, always the second line is the one giving the intended meaning, and then you end up with a translation. These papers, published year by year since we last did this program, have appeared in the various volumes of ESOP, E-S-O-P, the Epigraphic Society Occasional Papers, some of which are laid out on the table here. And the first of the ones that I did was this one of the fishing up of the sea. The next episode in the life of Maui that I found on that same tablet was his famous exploit of capturing the sun. In those far-off days when heroes lived and gods walked on the land, the sun was said to have speeded across the sky at any speed it happened to find convenient, very inconvenient for the human inhabitants below. So Maui took it upon himself to trap the sun at the point on the horizon where he rose, caught him with ropes, and tied him down, as is shown in this imaginative picture by Dittmer of the capture of the sun, and wounded him so severely that ever since he's only been able to move slowly across the sky. And that was the story of the regulating of the length of the days. The next legend I came across in the readings of the tablets dealt with how Maui brought fire to men. Through some accident, which the legend explains in detail on the tablet, all the fires went out one night and nobody was able to cook any food anymore. Everybody had to eat raw food, and they were very cold at night. So Maui once more came to the rescue by doing a dangerous journey up a mountain, and from there he leapt up into the sky and sailed his canoe across the Milky Way until he came to the land of fire, where he met his remote ancestor, the fire goddess, from whom he then, through various tricks, stole fire and brought it back to mankind. The legend is given in detail on the slide. I'm only giving you a summary of these things. And he had an adventurous trip back home as the goddess chased him, and he had to turn himself into a bird and escape that way. And there he is. There's the picture Ditmar drew of his ancestress, the fire goddess, who gave him one of her fingers flame, as you see there. He kept, by playing tricks, he kept throwing the finger away until she'd ended up by giving him every single one of her fingers. By this time she was furious, and that's when the great chase started across the sky. The next tablet I dealt with is one that they call in Easter Island Mamari. When it's supposed to be the name of the person who engraved it, but I really don't believe that. I think it's called Mamari for another reason. On this tablet I found the writing was arranged in quite a different way, and setting it out the way we would punctuate it on a European style of publication, it came out like that: a series of short phrases with the same part of a phrase repeated in every line. It turned out that these were spells to be cast by what in America would be called a medicine man. In the Polynesian areas is called a tohunga. In Easter Island and New Zealand, tohunga, or in Hawaii he's called a kahuna, a medicine man who has magic powers. Here he is shown by Ditmar, such a medicine man is shown by Ditmar casting spells in front of an image of one of the Maori gods. Another job that the tohunga carried out was to make sure that the weather was good. He could cast spells to calm stormy seas, or produce a wind blowing in the required direction when a voyage was about to be undertaken, and so forth. Such the legends say. Now a surprise was looming up for us. This map of the Polynesian Triangle shows more detail and is probably harder to see on the screen than the simpler one that I showed before. I'm showing it because I want you to see that while Easter Island is at the eastern extremity of a triangle, in the middle of a triangle is what we call nuclear Polynesia, and the principal island right at the center is Tahiti, often called Society Islands. Tahiti. Our attention is going to be suddenly drawn away from Easter Island to Tahiti. This came about because, by chance, when reading a book about the French artist Paul Gauguin, with no idea that I was going to find anything of concern to me, I came across this picture of a painting which is now in the Art Institute in Chicago, depicting his Tahitian wife, Gauguin, the painter Paul Gauguin's Tahitian wife, called Tehamana, and I could see there was Easter Island writing behind her. This was astonishing because he was painting in Tahiti, about 2,000 miles away from Easter Island. He never went to Easter Island. How could it come about? He lived in a different period from when the Easter Island chief dictated the tablets to the French bishop. He was living much later. The chieftain was in Tahiti around 1860, whereas Gauguin did not go to Tahiti till about 1893 or thereabouts. So this was a great mystery. The first thing was to set about deciphering it. Looking carefully at the picture, at a particular section of it, which I'm showing there, we found the Polynesian words written in French characters, which read in Polynesian, "The many ancestors of Tehamana." That's written out in ordinary Latin letters. You can see part of that there. So my guess was there must have been some tablet or other in the possession of his wife Tehamana or her family, giving her ancestry as set out in the Easter Island writing above, in the upper part of the picture, and his wife must have told Paul Gauguin that that's what it said, so he wrote it down in Polynesian writing in ordinary European script, and then painted a copy of what I suppose would be the tablet inherited by his wife from her ancestors. It turns out that if you apply to that Easter Island inscription, as it seems to be, the same sound values that the Easter Island chieftain assigned to them at the time when the bishop wrote out that dictionary that I described in the last program on this subject. If you give those sound values to those letters there, you can quickly see that the characters in fact do match the Easter Island characters. There's the actual painting drawn out in the middle, and above each of the supposedly Easter Island characters is the Easter Island way of writing it. It's easy to match them. And then using the sound values that the chief gave us so long ago, we can arrive at a Polynesian statement. It became apparent when doing that we're dealing not with Easter Island dialect of Polynesian, but certain words were in the Tahitian dialect. And that when you render them that way, you get back the following statement. It says, the many ancestors of Te Hamana, powerful men of property, drummers, men of importance, warriors bold, as well as others long since forgotten. Well, this is very interesting. How could it be that this statement, written in Easter Island script but in Tahitian dialect, had existed somewhere, no one had ever seen it, and Paul Gauguin had apparently been able to make a copy of it? Having worked out what it said, we then made it the subject of one of the articles in an issue of Aesop, and we used Paul Gauguin's painting as the cover of that particular issue, as you see there. About that time, I received a wonderful letter from chieftains, a chiefly family, one of whose members was a judge. Jock McCulloch is his European name, living in the central part of Polynesia, in an island north of New Zealand called Rarotonga. And they sent me a gift. They sent the gift of this ancient Polynesian adze carved in whalebone. It was an heirloom which they then were so generous as to give to me to wear. And this is what they wrote. It's Jock McCulloch is the European name of the writer, and his wife is Akatina. She's a chieftain in the Rarotonga hierarchy. He says, enclosed is a whalebone pendant given by a family in New Zealand in appreciation for our compiling a whakapapa. A whakapapa is a family tree. A whakapapa for them. They did say that the toki was symbolic and referred to construction, not only of wood, but history, and all that pertained thereto. I feel that your Easter Island work has made you a tohunga. You have felled the tree of ignorance and surrounding truth, which is, and surrounding the Easter Island pictographic carvings. So we give you this token and a ueru, which is a chant to give you strength and determination. This is what I learned at the island of Enuamanu, where I served for some years as the government agent from 1961 till 1967. And he then gives me the wording of the ueru, which is chant. It starts off, E rongo e tane, ke ikutaku toki, ke tua ki te tumu o te waka. I won't continue to read it in Polynesian. And here is the translation. It's addressed to two gods, Rongo, the god of the sky, and Tane, the god of the forest. O Rongo, O Tane, cradle in your arms my adze. Let the heart of the tree be separated. Let my adze allow the light to enter the heart of the tree. Let my adze cleave a groove in the center of the tree. Let my adze gaze into the center of the tree. Let the heart of a tree face apart, O Rongo, O Taku, O Tane. My adze is now asleep. It rests pillowed in the arms of Maukate, the westerly wind. Well, that wonderful token from Polynesia, it sure did give me strength to carry on with my decipherments. However, from some of the decipherments I had done, I realised that I'm no tohunga at all. I may be able to read some obscure material, but I can't do such things as raising a wind, raising a wind when it's required from a given direction, or causing the full moon to shine, or causing the moon to go behind a cloud if it's inconvenient, and so forth. So I'm only an apprentice as far as tohungas go. The ads that they sent me, those beautiful little ivory ads, came in a packet which almost symbolically, it seemed to me, carried 2 postage stamps, both of them to do with the early church in Polynesia. One on the right-hand side is a portrait of a Monsignor who was establishing the Catholic Church in Polynesia, and the one on the left, as you can see, depicts the crucifixion of Christ. It was issued by the Cook Islands, which is the group to which Rarotonga belongs. Like my letter came from Rarotonga, and was issued at the time at the Easter time, which is appropriate, of course. So there are not many places which show the crucifixion on their stamps. The next event in this unexpected series of events is that I received a letter from a colleague of mine in Texas, Professor George Carter, whom you see there, telling me that he had just come across, most unexpectedly, a picture of another work by Gauguin, not a painting, a carving this time. And he sent me the picture. It depicted the crucifixion of Christ with, again, what appeared to be Easter Island letters on either side. Now, he was the first person who had noticed that in this work of Gauguin. Known for so long, yet no one had detected that it had so-called Easter Island script on it. Well, Gauguin, of course, lived in Tahiti, so by this time I was prepared to expect it to be in the Tahitian dialect, which proved to be correct. Furthermore, it was reading the way European inscriptions are written. That is, say, it started at the top left and read right across to the right. Then you went to the second line down, beginning at the left, and read across to the right, and so on. So George Carter sent me the picture and invited me to see whether I could decipher it. My first comment on the telephone was, "Oh, I'll try to, but there won't be time to do it for this issue of Aesop. It'll be too difficult a job." And there I was totally mistaken. As soon as I started on it, I realized immediately it would be very simple to do. First thing, I had to write out the signs that you saw in the crucifix there, taking them in the order in which they appear, and writing them out in horizontal lines, and then numbering each one. Then we dealt with each sign separately, and it's so simple and straightforward that I'd really like to go through it with an audience, because I think you'll find it a wonderful way to get to know how Easter Island writing and other Polynesian writing, such as Tahitian, can be deciphered. The first signs on the left, numbers 1 and 2, you see them at the top left there. Now I go back to the signs again. Number 1 is a ring. So you say the word for ring in Tahitian. The word for ring in Tahitian is tipea. The part represents K in other parts of Polynesia. So where you say tipea in Tahiti, you would say tipeka in New Zealand. Tipea. But tipea is a homophone. That's just to say, it sounds the same. It's a homophone of te pea, which means the cross. So, of course, as you can guess, as soon as I saw that parallel, I said, hey, this is going to deal with a Christian topic which we've never encountered in Polynesia before. This has been written in modern times. The next sign is a palm frond, for which the Tahitian word is tamara. But tamara is a homophone of tamara, which means blessed sun. Now, in reading Easter Island writing or Tahitian writing, you have to supply the little prepositions or intermediate minor words yourself. So what this is saying is the cross of the blessed sun. S-O-N. And we go to the next part of the top line. The first sign is number 3. Now that was given by Metora, the chief who visited Tahiti in 1860. He gave that in his list of symbols he gave the bishop, and he told him that meant God, Atua. And the next sign is one that we've encountered also on the painting of his wife. It occurred on that one too. A person sitting, pronounced noho in Easter Island, but in the Tahitian dialect, arahi. So it gives noho arahi, but that is the same. That has almost exactly the same sound as the Tahitian words meaning to pray. So we're getting a translation now which says it's the cross of the blessed Son of God praying for, and now we're going to the next sign. That sign we've encountered in a previous program. It means pardon me, where are we? Fetu. It means fetu. And when we encountered it in Easter Island, it was hetu, meaning a star. The Tahitian dialect is not hetu, but fetu. Fetu. So we read it as fetu. But fetu is a perfect, almost perfect, homophone, sounding the same, as thatu, which means our Lord. The next sign, I'm sorry, I missed that one, I'll go back one. The next sign to it, number 6 on the screen, is a symbol for a dog. A dog in Easter Island is kuri. It's kuri in New Zealand too. But in Tahiti, where they drop the K, it becomes uri. Uri with a jerk in front of it. But that's a homophone of ura, meaning life, or salvation, or redemption. The next sign after that, number 7, it's a stem or a stalk for which the Tahitian word is fa'a, and sign number 8 gives the Tahitian word ora with that sense. Signs 7 and 8 taken together yield the word fa'aora. But fa'aora, that's 2 words. But if you put them together to make one word, you get a new word, which means to forgive or forgiveness. Come to signs 9 and 10 now. The 9th sign is a bird, manu, same word in New Zealand and Easter Island. But it's also a homophone of mano, meaning many, or very many. Sign number 10, twisted, can be rendered as pio, pio in Tahitian, piko in New Zealand, pio in Tahitian. But pio has a second meaning, sins. Then we come to the next 2 signs, 11 and 12. These have to be taken together and yield a homophone which one says little chick and the other one is bud. But if you say those 2 words together, ti'a'o, you get another homophone which means of the world. So this last series we've been doing is Our Lord prays for our salvation and for the forgiveness of the countless sins of the world. Coming now to sign 13, tendrils, called nape, and 14, this is a flying bird, which the Easter Island chief told it to be pronounced rero timanu, flying, the bird is flying. These signs together give you nape reira, thus, and the pain or suffering. Thus, the suffering, and then the last signs, 15 and 16. 15 is a spider, tirahu, with 16, ara, a branch, to form tirahu ara, spider branch. But that's a homophone of the Tahitian word meaning Tirahuara, the Saviour. Such were the sufferings of the Saviour. Now, how did this happen? It's obvious that my earlier theory that Te Hamana, his wife, had a copy of some ancient genealogy of her family, and that Gauguin had been allowed to copy it. So that won't work anymore, because here we have a whole series of Christian terms that weren't used in ancient Polynesia. And so I had to hunt through all the ancient dictionaries and look through the early editions of the Bible and Polynesian scripts, Polynesian translations of the Bible, to find these words. And I found they all dated back to about 1830 at the earliest in the various islands. So it couldn't possibly be older than that. And all the indications are it was Paul Gauguin himself, the carver of the crucifix, who made it up himself. That's the only way we can account for it. So apparently he didn't just have a piece of engraved wood given to him by his wife. He was taught how to read and write Polynesian script, something that's totally unknown. It's been believed right up till now that no modern person could read the tablets. And as for writing them, it didn't even enter into our ideas. So this, of course, raises a question: how did Paul Gauguin achieve this? So I began to read all I could about Gauguin and look at books about his life and his paintings. There is a self-portrait that he did. And here we have a tropical painting by him. Now, what I had understood about him was that he grew up in France and later went to Tahiti and became interested in tropical scenes and Polynesian scenes then. It turns out my ideas were a bit wrong. He was born in France, of course, served his military training during the war with Germany, the Franco-Prussian War. Then he became a sailor, an able seaman, and made voyages to various parts of the world. One of his voyages in 1887 took him to the island of Martinique in the Caribbean and to Panama. And whilst there, he did the earliest of his paintings that we know of tropical vegetation, this particular one. This is not Tahiti, this is either Martinique or Panama. Then he went back to France, and for the next 8 or 9 years, from about 1888 onwards, was painting pictures, many of them of French peasantry, especially in Brittany. Here are peasants harvesting, scenes in Brittany. Now, to my surprise, we encounter a crucifix once again. He painted an imaginary painting of the crucifixion occurring in Brittany. I can't get the whole picture into this one slide, so we move now to the next frame, which shows Breton peasants praying at the foot of the cross in Brittany. So we can detect from that Paul Gauguin had a strong religious sense and also a fantastic view of how religion might be viewed, set with this imaginary crucifixion in Brittany. Here's another scene in Brittany. Then all of a sudden he took upon himself to leave France, and in 1891 he made a voyage to Tahiti, leaving behind his family, most of whom had gone to Denmark by this time, travelling alone to Tahiti, where he embarked upon a whole new life, adopting a common law Tahitian wife who would not be legal under European systems, of course, but was perfectly legal in Tahiti. And so he came to know Te Hamana, his wife. Almost as soon as he got to Tahiti, he immersed himself in studies of Polynesian mythology and religion and began to write this notebook, of which we see pages here. This book is preserved now in the Louvre in Paris. The page that's open on the left is dealing with the gods and the birth of the gods, as he has there. He's writing in French, and more of them there. So he soon became very well informed about Tahitian traditions. He painted many, many pictures of Tahitians, as if most of us are familiar with seeing at least some of them. But he also took up woodcuts. This one is interesting because it shows his signature in the form of a cartouche, PG, a cartouche on the upper left there, which matches the one we saw at the foot of the crucifix when we first became aware of that. And an unknown person made this drawing of Gauguin in the act of carving wood. He took up wood carving after he went to Tahiti. And here's an example of one of the carvings he made of a traditional Tahitian god. Here we are seeing him again, seeing his wife again, with the inscription which he had copied, as I supposed, from her archives, and which we now realize he very probably composed himself. How could that be? And the picture before, I obtained a copy of a book called Noa Noa, in which he gives an account of his life in Tahiti. Noa Noa means fragrance. He liked to call Tahiti island of fragrance. He gives an account there of his life with Te Hamana, who is obviously much more than just a wife. This passage occurs in Te Hamana and struck me as important. He says, "Through her," that's Te Hamana, "I enter into mysteries that have hitherto remained inaccessible to me. She leads me to a full understanding of her race. We talk of God and of gods. I instruct her, and she in turn instructs me." I believe that what we have to read into that is that, totally contrary to what we previously believed about Polynesian writing, it was much more widely distributed than we originally supposed, not confined only to Easter Island, but it existed in other forms, such as this Tahitian form with Tahitian dialect words, which was known to people living in Tahiti in the 1890s, and that one of those persons must have been his wife, Te Hamana, who instructed her husband into the mystery of Polynesian writing, very much as he himself says in Noa Noa, but also must have told him that he had to keep it secret. So he could not be explicit in that account he gave in Noa Noa as to just what these mysteries were that he'd learned. We now know from the materials he left behind that it must have been the Easter Island script, which he not only learned to read, but recognized it as having a Tahitian form and learned to write it. Te Hamana must now become a major figure in modern Polynesian history, a major link with the past, and through her talent and her learning ability and her ability to teach, she taught her husband to read the secrets of her race, and he produced evidences of such a character which delighted me, because they show clearly that the method I had derived for reading Easter Island script is correct, because it works exactly the same way with the Tahitian examples. So this was a great comfort to me. And the crucifixion of Christ has a strange resonance to it. It appears 3 times in the story from 3 different sources. Now, a few years ago, when I first learned to read Easter Island writing, it occurred to me that it might be possible to instruct the young people of Easter Island to read and write it if we could encourage the cooperation of the Catholic priest in that island, because it seemed to me he would be in charge of education. It's a very tiny island with very few people there. So one had to think very carefully how to go about this. You may remember from our previous program that I had had encouraging letters from the Native Council of Chiefs of Easter Island that they believed that this was the correct way to read their tablets. I thought that perhaps if I could find a way of interesting the priest on the island in the subject, he might use a sample of the script that I wrote to teach with. The question is, have I written it correctly? Is there anybody who could vet the sample that I attempted to produce? The whiteboard in this picture laid below the other ones are the old wooden boards. The whiteboard is a modern piece of wood on which I have drawn out characters composed in the same way as I see Gauguin composed his writing, by turning to religion, believing that through Christian religion we could get at the people who are very devout Christians in Easter Island. And so I made an attempt to write the Lord's Prayer in Easter Island script. And I did send it out to Rarotonga to ask if they would vet it, to see if they gave their approval to it. Unfortunately, the judge with whom I was communicating, Jock McCulloch, was taken ill and had to go to New Zealand for a heart operation at that time. So we didn't make much progress. However, Gauguin has come to my rescue, and I see from what he did that obviously what I was doing was on the right track. I wrote my tablet out in the traditional way, that's starting at the bottom right-hand corner and reading along to the left, and then you have to turn it right round through 180 degrees and go back again in the reverse direction. That's the traditional way of writing. Gauguin, you remember, just converted it to the modern European way of reading from left to right. I did it the old way. And starting at the lower right-hand corner and reading along, the signs I have read there are homophones intended to sound like Tomatu Matua, which is our Father, E Nohoana, who lives, ki te rangi, in the sky, kia tapu tua ingoa, may it be hallowed your name, and so on. I won't go through the whole Lord's Prayer. Well, after seeing what Gauguin did, I no longer feel bashful about disclosing that piece of my own attempt at writing Easter Island writing. I don't believe it's too bad. So this is the first occasion in which I've been able to give it a public airing.
Dr. Phil, what an exciting find and how thankful we are for you giving us a double witness, if you would, to the Easter Island tablets. And that is, I think it is a monumental find in causing us to open our minds to the travels and migrations of various people. I see a very interesting tool here. Could you explain to us what this is? It's
Yes, I learned from the records made by the early visitors to Easter Island that the Easter Islanders at that time, I'm talking about 150 years ago, still remembered how their tablets were written, even though they no longer wrote them themselves. They said that the scribe, who had to be a tohunga, a priest, had to have a shark's tooth embedded in the tip of a piece of wood, and he engraved by cutting away. Shark's teeth are very sharp and very hard, cutting away and producing the grooves that way. This is one example of several such tools I made myself.
Wow, that is exciting. And thanks for sharing this with us, and what a honor, and well deserved by you, sir. And I think that is, I can see how you would treasure this, certainly, because of the work you have done in the Pacific areas and so forth. And I know from the people there how much they appreciate you also. And because this gives us a full circle, in a sense, that many might say, well, those were natives in the South Pacific or in the Pacific. And here we have many thoughts that we even carry in modern day written in that alphabet. So I think that is interesting. I would I would like also to say, and to take advantage of this opportunity, to say this is Aesop. This is a book put out by the Epigraphic Society, and you see in this the very picture that has to do with this subject. This particular issue of Aesop has 336 pages. If you want to be informed, my friends, and help preserve some of the ancient history, cultures, and the heritage of various people in both this hemisphere, the Pacific and other places, Europe, the migrations, the travels of people, I certainly recommend that you contact the Epigraphic Society, of whom Dr. Fell founded. And what a work it is. I don't know how many back issues, but it is published a couple of 3 issues a year, isn't it?
No, only one a year now.
Only one a year.
So it's an annual, and we're up to volume 22 now.
Volume 22. But what a vast amount of information. You're not going to find anywhere else much of this information. And so I highly want to recommend that many of you subscribe to Aesop, because you're going to receive an education that you're not going to find anywhere else. It is the fact in my travels that Dr. Fell is not a loose cannon on the deck by any means. He double documents everything to the point that truth is truth, and truth will always stand on its own. So I want to take this advantage of this opportunity because of this wonderful talk, and I hope you can grasp the importance of a second witness to the translation of the Easter Island tablets. And certainly, Barry, I know you must be very proud, and I, for one, want to thank you for your efforts in that.
It's a pleasure. We're grateful to you for your cooperation.
What a find.
May I add one thing to what you were saying about Aesop? Many people can't afford the price, $32.50 it costs us to produce each volume. But what would be helpful if people are able to advise local libraries on what they could buy, if local libraries could subscribe, that is one way in which it could be distributed more widely. We do send it to about 200 libraries now. 80 of those are in overseas countries, and the remainder are mostly museums or university libraries in North America and Canada. But many more libraries could very well do with this volume if they had the funds to spend $32.50 a year on it, or if they really want it, we would donate it to them.
Well, and I know there are many of you out there that can afford to purchase one of these for your library. Read it yourself and then pass it on. I would say this, I know many of you are serious students, and once you have it, you're not going to pass it on, but consider, that's a good lay work, is buying one for yourself and one for your local library, where the young people that study there can have this rich heritage. And I'll tell you, with the ancient writings being protected slack as they are at this time, which by that I mean so many people in ignorance desecrate ancient writings of one form or the other. And if a young person is educated in the value in history and love and just mankind, the fact that mankind left a message that is really important, then this in itself will help preserve the heritage of not only the Americas, but Europe itself and the Pacific. And so you may contact the Society with the address that will be on the screen at the end of this documentary.
Here is the current volume, Dr. Murray, in which for the first time we have been able to encourage young people directly. These are 2 students in Wyoming who prepared an exhibit for their archaeological competition this past year. A very good exhibit illustrating the principles of the work we're doing, and it came to the notice of the governor of Wyoming, and to our notice the teacher drew our attention to it, and we were able to have the pleasure of awarding medals to the 2 young people who did this. This is the first time it's happened, and we're hoping that other schools will encourage their students to do it too, and if they do, we'll be happy to keep medals being awarded each year.
Now that is fascinating. It certainly is. Here you have the 2 young people and receiving the award and their display, rather.
What the governor wrote was really encouraging to us. May I read it to you? Or
Surely,
would
please
you?
do.
Would
Please
you
do.
care? All right. After it was over, Governor Mike Sullivan of Wyoming wrote to each of the 2 boys as follows: "I'm not sure that I've ever written to an epigrapher before, but it is a memorable occasion, particularly when my objective is to congratulate you for the medal you were awarded for the extensive work you did to create pre-Columbian messages to America. You should take pride in achieving such a success, and particularly in being so strongly endorsed by Dr. Fell. Many of us, whose years number significantly more than yours, will not realize such accomplishments in our lives. Congratulations. With best wishes, I am very truly yours, Mike Sullivan, Governor."
That's
really
wonderful.
We were
That's
so
wonderful.
grateful to the governor for
Yes.
sponsoring us like that.
This last issue, or the issue that's coming out right now, is on Kamakaco, and you're familiar with that. Dr. Fell did a 1-hour documentary on Kamakaco, and so I'm sure that would be a good one to start. Well, I think that's fascinating, Dr. Fell, that the young people, and I've noticed young people becoming interested and in epigraphics, in the history of our nation, the land, and I certainly, for one, want to thank you, because I think at the prime root of all this, we see your work blending out and moving out into the country. And I know that it started in part with your great work, which unfortunately is no longer published, Bronze Age America. That was a fantastic work, and of course you have America BC that covers much of that ground that is in print today.
We are looking for another edition of Bronze Age America. A German edition is in preparation now.
Well, that's wonderful. It will be great if it comes. If we do, I certainly want to recommend it to our viewers, because I fortunately have 2 copies of it in my library, and I'm very proud of it.
One of the interesting things that happened this past year, or past 2 years, was the discovery, as we all remember, of the so-called Iceman in the Alps in northern Italy. He had what they first thought was a bronze adze in his possession, and he was assigned to the Bronze Age. But later on, when more careful investigations were made, it was found that the adze is copper, not bronze. So he was then reassigned to the Copper Age, which made him by far the oldest known human remains ever identified in a mummified form. But what struck us over here is that the adzes that we find made by the people who were trading with King Woden Lithi at that site in Ontario, they were copper too. And not only were they copper adzes, but they were the same identical shape. Many of our viewers will have seen the excellent article in the National Geographic magazine in which the Iceman himself was depicted and his possessions, one of which included a very beautifully shaped copper adze. Here is the identical twin brother of that adze, but this one was found in Michigan in a association with objects indicating it's about 3,000 or 4,000 years old. It was made by the Indians, the Algonquian Indians of northern Michigan at that time. About 1,000 other copper objects have been found in the general vicinity of the site in Ontario where King Waidenluthi was trading, and we think that the ultimate source of the copper he was using was the Michigan copper, which is native copper, that is to say, copper in metallic form, not in a salt of copper, metallic form that the Indians could mine, and they could hammer it into this shape, which for all the world is the same thing that the Iceman in Europe had.
Wow, isn't that something?
Beautiful
Just
piece of work,
precious.
isn't it?
It is a beautiful piece of work. Very definitely. Well, we find out that ingenuity has been with man for many, many years. And thank you so much for sharing this with me.
Pleasure.
And again, it has been an extreme pleasure, and especially how exciting.
Well,
I'm really excited about the second witness to this alphabet.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us, and we just wish the best to you and your lovely missus, and we always enjoy so much doing this documentary with you. And
thank you.
Thank you for all the good work that you have accomplished. I know that good works always have a little bit of pain with them, but what most people have derived from it in a very strong plus in knowledge, which is, and truth, it's what we seek. Then I want to thank you for having us again.
You're very gracious, Dr. Murray. It's always a pleasure to us to have you here with your team. Matua, e noho nā, ki te rangi kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tae mai tō rangatiratanga, that's thy kingdom come. No te rangi in the sky, ki te henua, as on the earth. Kia meatia tau e pai e ki te henua. Ho mai mai a matu mane he kai mā matu. Mo tēnei rā, kia murua o matuhara. Haka ora matu itakina, that's deliver us from evil.